Hello guys, today we are going to talk about A Tale of Two Cities. So before starting the book, let us know about this book. A Tale of Two Cities is an 1859 historical novel by Charles Dickens, set in London and Paris before and during the French Revolution. This novel tells the story of French Dr. Manet, 18 years in prison in Bastille, Paris, and his daughter Lucy, who he has never met, and his release to live in London. The story takes place before the conditions that led to the French Revolution and terrorism. In An Introduction to the Adventure Fiction Encyclopedia, critic Don Damasio claims that this is an adventure novel because the protagonist is always at risk of being imprisoned or killed. So this was a small introduction about the book and the author of the book. Now read A Tale of Two Cities and understand what is special about it. That year was 1775, and both France and Great Britain were plagued by social problems. Jerry Cruncher, a casual worker at Tellson's Bank, stops Dover's stagecoach with an urgent message to Jarvis Rory. The message tells Rory to wait for the young woman in Dover, who replies with the mysterious word recalled to life. At Dover, Rory meets Lucy Manet, a young orphan found in France by her father, a once prominent doctor who believed she was dead. Rory escorts Lucy to Paris, where they meet Dickens, a former servant of Dr. Manet who kept Manet safe in the attic. After spending 18 years in Bastille, Manet spends all his time making shoes, which is her hobby learned in her prison. Rory assures Lucy that her love and dedication can bring her father back to life, and they do. It is now 1780. Charles Darnley has been accused of treason against the British Crown. An exaggerated lawyer named Stryber undertakes Darnley's case, but the court admits Darnley only when his drunken, useless colleague Sidney Carton helps him. Carton supported his argument by pointing out that he had a mysterious similarity to the defendant, undermining the prosecutor's allegations that he actively identified Darnley as a spy revealed by the authorities. I will make it. Lucy and Dr. Manet monitor the court proceedings, and that night Carton takes Darnley to a tavern and asks how it feels to receive the sympathy of a woman like Lucy. Carton despises and offends that Darnley reminded him of everything he might have given up. In France, the cruel Marquis Yves Lemond rode a carriage and attacked a child of plebeians. Showing the typical poor attitude of the aristocrats of the time, the Marquis does not regret, curses the peasant, and rushes back to his castle, where his nephew Darnley waits for his nephew Darnley to arrive from England. When Darnley arrived late that night, he cursed his uncle and French aristocrats for the sneaky treatment of humans. Abandoning his identity as Yves Lemond, he announced his intention to return to England. That night, the Marquis was murdered. The murderer left a note signed with the nickname Jack of the French Revolution. A year later, Darnley asks Manet for permission to marry Lucy. He says that if Lucy accepts, he will reveal his true identity to Manet. Meanwhile, Carton vows her love for Lucy, admitting that his life is worthless, but she helped him dream of a better, more valuable being. On the streets of London, Jerry Cruncher is dragged into the burial of a spy named Roger Cry. Later that night, he demonstrates his talent as a resurrected man by sneaking into the graveyard and stealing and selling Cry's body. Meanwhile, in Paris, another British spy named John Versand appears at Defarge's wine shop. Ballard wants to find evidence of the growth of the revolution, which is still in the secret stage. Mrs. Defarge sits in a store that is compiling secret records of the people the revolution is about to carry out. Returning to London, on her wedding morning, Darnley keeps her promise with Manet. He reveals his true identity, and that night Manet reappears in his old prison habit of making shoes. 9 days later, Manet regains her heart and soon joins their honeymoon on her honeymoon. After Darnay returns, Carton visits him and seeks his friendship. Darnay guarantees that the Carton is always welcome to her home. The year is 1789. Peasants in Paris attack Bastille and the French Revolution begins. Revolutionaries kill aristocrats on the street, and Gavel, who is responsible for maintaining the estate of Yves Lemond, is imprisoned. 3 years later, he wrote a letter to Darnay asking for help. Despite the imminent danger to his man, Darnay immediately headed for France. As soon as Darnay arrives in Paris, the French revolutionary arrests him as émigré. Lucy and Manet head to Paris hoping to save him. Darnay stayed in jail for 1 year and 3 months before being tried. To free him, Manet takes advantage of his considerable influence with the revolutionary who sympathizes with him for spending time in Bastille. Darnay was acquitted but was arrested again the same night. This accusation comes from Defarge and his vengeful wife. Carton arrives in Paris with a plan to save Darnay, with the help of John Versand, who turns out to be Solomon Prowse, the long-deceased brother of Lucy's loyal servant Miss Prowse. At Darnay's trial, Defarge creates a letter he finds in Manet's old cell in Bastille. The letter explains the reason for Manet's imprisonment. A few years ago, the Yves Lemond brothers, Darnay's father and uncle, sought medical assistance from Manet. They asked him to take care of a woman who was raped by one of her brothers and a brother who was deadly stabbed by the same brother. Yves Lemond arrested him for fear that Manet would report her wrongdoing. Upon hearing this story, the jury convicted Darnay of the crime of his ancestors and sentenced him to death within 24 hours. That night, at Defarge's wine shop, Carton hears Madame Defarge planning to execute Lucy and her daughter, and Darnay's daughter. After all, Madame Defarge is the surviving sister of a man and a woman who was killed by Yves Lemond. Carton arranges an immediate departure for Manet from France. He then visits Darnay in prison, dresses up with him, dictates a letter of explanation, and then unknowingly stuns his friends. Ballard takes Darnay disguised as a Carton to a waiting bus, and the Carton disguised as Darnay is waiting for his execution. Darnay, Lucy, their kids, and the doctor. Madame Defarge, who escapes from Paris, arrives at Lucy's apartment hoping to arrest her. There she finds a very protective Mr. Prospector. The brawl continues and Madame Defarge is killed by a bullet from her gun. Sidney Carton greets his death in the guillotine, and the narrator confidently claims that Carton will die knowing that he finally found meaning in his life. So guys, this was a summary of A Tale of Two Cities. Thank you.